This is House Corrections Institutions. It is Wednesday, January 22nd. And we're shifting gears. We are back dealing with our capital budget. So we have BGS here with Joe Asia to continue our update in terms of projects that we funded in FY24 and FY25. And I believe we probably finished at, was it the master plan in Middlesex?
We're starting on State House. Oh, did we finish that? I was on page 9.
We're on State House HVAC.
Yeah, page 9.
Okay, so welcome. The ongoing saga of the State House HVAC system. You might also want to weigh in, Joe, that this slide doesn't show the total amount of money we've put in.
Okay.
Total amount for the project list.
Good morning. I'm Joe Aja, Director for Design and Construction of Buildings and General Services. Picking up from last week, we were at the State House HVAC project. Heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. This project came about because of a mold issue. I think it was in 2017. That was one of our first long humid summers. And because there's nobody roaming the halls or using these rooms during the summer season, there was no way for the rooms to reheat. And so the moisture was condensing on the furniture, the floors, and the likes of that. It started to grow mold in the 30s and 40s. So I did a very quick project to get rid of all the mold, having replaced some of the carpet. We cleaned the ductwork, blinds, ceilings, everything to get rid of the mold. And because of our longer, humid summers and not occupying this building, we need a means of reheating the air. So when you're air conditioning, to get the moisture out of the air, you super cool it at 55 degrees. So you can't have that cold air going in all the time because yet again, it could be the moisture issue. So you reheat it to make it comfortable. And that's what we were looking to do here. So as you're going up the ramp to the cafeteria from here, and you look to your right, there's a little brick bump out now into that alleyway with 2 vents on the roof. And that is where we're going to put a water-to-water heat exchange. So we evaluated through a life cycle cost analysis to determine what was the best heating source to install, and that turned out to be a water-to-water heat exchanger. And what that does is the chilled water is circulating through the building, cooling the space, and that return water is actually warm. We're extracting the warmth out of that and heating this air back up. So it's a heat exchanger.
So there's a lot more involved than just that as well.
Right.
So how much, do you have handy how much we've put in to date on this project? Because the project is much more encompassing in terms of updating the HVAC system to heat and cool the first floor and then this floor and upstairs. And we haven't done anything with the cafeteria yet.
For the speakers edition. I don't have the total appropriations to date. It's going to be roughly a $13 million project though.
Yeah.
Most of that has been appropriated. So as Madam Chair was saying, what we've done so far to date is 2.5 years ago, we started in the Senate on the first floor. Changed out the air handler there. We have roughly 9 air handling units throughout the building. First one's being installed in the 70s. So that one got replaced first. Then we moved our way sort of down the hallway, and where that brick addition is for the heat exchangers going are 2 other units. And those feed the balance of the first floor, 20s, 30s, and 40s. And then up above in the crow's nest, which is right behind the upper chambers of the dome, chambers of the house, are 2 other air handling units. So those 4 have been replaced and are now providing the that we need. As mentioned, I think last week, the issues in rooms like this, and certainly on the other side, is that we now have designed the systems to conform to today's standards. But in order to get that much air into these rooms, some of those ductwork are very narrow and they will start to vibrate. What we're also looking at, as you see over here on the unit and the unit behind us, this unit specifically on to the left, is the air's coming out of it and it's hitting the top of that bookcase and then blowing across to everything. So what we're, all right, the next phase that we're looking to do here is to take these units out and put all the ductwork overhead. And that'll help disperse the airflow into the room and make it a bit more comfortable for everybody. In order to do that, though, it's going to be a project in itself to get that done. But also that comes into play is the interaction with the potential expansion of the State House. Because that too, when we're connecting basically the this part of the annex of the State House to what is known as the cafeteria addition, the speakers addition, and the mezzanine would be yet another 1 or 2 air handlers. And because of what we may do with space here, as one of the rooms across the hall, and also in the 40s and the 20s, is to make a connector that runs through into that space. If that's the case, we don't want to be putting that ductwork in units in advance. So they're somewhat tied together, but separate. And then we also have 2 units that are above the cafeteria that feed the cafeteria and the whole mezzanine and speakers addition. And so those are in the outlying years. And that's what this money will be going towards.
So it's a whole system that we're looking at for the whole building. Our current HVAC system has been a hodgepodge with different years. Some were put in the 70s, some were put in the 80s, and some were put in the 90s. So that's part of the issue, because you got different systems. But the real overlying issue at this point, in terms of how do we move forward doing more work, is if and when we do an expansion to the State House.
Yes.
An expansion to the State House would be really looking at House committee rooms, changing the configuration, committee rooms, size of the committee rooms, and also where would we put the expansion? Would it be on top of the cafeteria? Would it be going out to the sides? And what's the cost of that? Because you're at least in the 20 million to do an expansion. 24 million to do an expansion. I don't know where we are at this point with that. Last year, there was a lot of support for an expansion. The ground has shifted a little bit, I think, between then and now, in terms of what do we do. There has been some changes done with committee rooms going forward, probably sometime in February, where downstairs rooms 10, 11, and 9, 10, and 11 were public rooms. Folks who were new last year, last term, folks now, those rooms down there were public. Room 9 was the coat room. And 10 and 11 were meeting rooms. And for caucuses on Tuesdays, the majority party would meet in room 11, the minority party would meet in room 10. Those rooms during COVID were converted over to committee rooms because they needed to be more airflow. So they were taken offline in terms of meeting rooms. The room next door here was a committee room. The room across the hall where they had the couch and recliners, that was our old committee room. That's where institutions used to
That's where they found the first mold.
That's where they found, how ironic. And upstairs, the 2 rooms in the middle above this were also committee rooms. So the committee rooms for the House were on this floor and upstairs. We had no committee rooms for the House downstairs in those. So the discussion has been that the other body wants to bring rooms 10 and 11 back to being meeting rooms so that we don't have to keep going over to the pavilion. That was just a stopgap to help us during COVID. But in order to do that, folks are not willing to open up these 4 little committee rooms back into committee rooms. So in order to do that, you got to find space for the committees. So the work over the summer, fall, and finishing up now is the mezzanine, which is between this floor and the ground floor. It's a mezzanine. That's where our legislative council folks used to be. Those folks have been moved over to the Pink Lady and to Aiken. And there's been renovations happening in the mezzanine for 2 committee rooms there. So once that gets completed, which should be sometime in February, 2 committees from downstairs, ones will move up to the mezzanine that then opens up rooms 10 and 11. From there, I don't know where we're gonna go. I don't know where we're gonna go. If there was an expansion to be done, what would occur is this wall here and the wall on the other side that's judiciary, those 2 walls would be torn down. And there would be a wall put in the middle of that other room. And the same thing would happen across the hallway. The same thing would happen upstairs. That would then allow for larger ductwork to be put in here to accommodate the new air handler. Right now, because we don't know what we're doing with the expansion, we had decided last session in this committee room to keep the current ductwork, put in the new air handlers, but adjust the flow so that not all the air that can come through that air handler is coming through, because if we did, the ductwork would be rattling. So at this point, we're kind of on hold because we don't know what's going to happen with an expansion or where the money's going to come from.
Can't do a piece.
So the goal was to have more air coming into the committees. And the goal with the expansion is to have larger committee rooms. But you got, how many committees do we have now? 13, 14? It's one or the other. You gotta have room for them.
As new people have probably realized, this is not enough room. It's way too tight.
We better be first on that list to get a new committee.
It's bad. You haven't been in a small one.
This is
Yeah.
this is from across the way.
But it's not, I mean, we can manage. And by the way, my seat's very comfortable. But it's not good for the public to not be able to get enough people in here to, you know.
No, that's good, isn't it?
Well, I'm gonna be cynical. The more comfortable you get, the longer the session's gonna last. Yeah, let me tell you, when it starts getting warm out there in April and May, you want out of this building and you want to go home.
Yep. I just want, if people are coming here, to be able to come into a room and not go, oh, there's no room for me and leave.
Right, exactly. Exactly. But now that we do things more hybrid with Zoom and YouTube, there isn't quite as much pressure as people coming into the room because they can access our meetings in a electronic manner, which you couldn't pre-COVID.
No.
So that has changed a little bit of the dynamic here. But anyway, it's getting warm in here because I did kick up the heat a little
Thank
bit.
goodness, I was wondering.
I did kick up the heat a little bit. So I don't know what's gonna happen with it. Are you all done here? You still gotta put in the exchanger.
They're still working down quietly down there. There's a few people plumbing away to get that heat exchanger in. As long as they stay quiet, they'll continue working through the winter.
See, that's the other thing. Whenever there's work done in the State House, a lot of it, most of it cannot be done while we're in session. It only can occur once we leave in the middle of May until we come back the first week in January. And that increases your costs because you're doing it in phases and it's a stop and go and stop and go. Did I miss anything, Joe?
No, summed it all up nicely.
Questions from the committee?
You just don't want to do the work in this room across the way, just in case they put a connector.
Can't do it until we know the.
That's right. I mean, yes, we could,
Yeah.
but, how much do you want to do if we know we're going to renovate?
Right.
So, and that, do we move the walls now or do we do it later? Ductwork coming up from the air handler, will be the same size, because the space is still this whole floor.
Gotcha.
It's just, other BAB boxes that we put in and stuff like that. So,
How many years have you been talking expansion?
A lot. Many years, so many iterations, it depends. It really depends.
The base keeps going.
Yeah, I think now in the expansion, you're at least at 24 mil. I would think.
Higher than that, I'm sure.
And if you put a floor above the cafeteria, when the cafeteria was built and that expansion was built in late 80s, it was designed by code, to code back then, to hold a floor above the cafeteria. That is no longer,
things have changed.
the codes have changed, so you'd have to really enforce to put a floor above the cafeteria, but that was the intent back in 88, was we did the major expansion back then, built the cafeteria, and the goal was for future expansion, you could put a floor up there. But now the codes have changed, and it's not up to code to hold the weight of another floor. And then the question becomes, if you do put a floor above the cafeteria, all your mechanicals right now are on the roof of the cafeteria, and there's residents that live up the hill here. And they can hear the mechanicals work. And if you build the floor on top of that, and you put your mechanicals on top of that floor, it's even gonna exacerbate what the neighbors hear for noise. So,
Joel figured it out.
if you go out on the
It's
sides,
that easy.
go out on the sides, you could get involved in blasting, but you got,
Even more parts.
rocks, you got rocks behind, you got ledge behind you. And if you go extend on the side, each side of the State House, you start triggering historic preservation, you start triggering federal historic preservation and the Capitol complex. So there's a lot of layers that get played into this.
Piece of cake.
Troy has a bill for that.
That's why he's losing his hair. Yeah, and walleyes. Anything else on this one?
Moving on to 133 State Street and the renovations for the legislature IT department. Division. When Agency of Digital Services in their growth were closing out their servers and going to the cloud, the space on the first floor, which was the state server room for 30, 40 plus years, was done away. And so originally ADS was looking to reuse that space, or then they got relocated up to National Life in this space. So that was an opportunity to consolidate one of our buildings on Baldwin Street, 9 Baldwin specifically, where Ledge IT resided, and their servers were down here in the basement. And servers in the basement, certainly one that's sitting on Ledge, is not a good idea. So we have renovated about 2/3 of the space of the first floor in the northeast wing to house the legislature IT. So Kevin's group is all down there who aren't full-time up here. He has offices, built space down there, and the server is also in 133 State Street. The other side of the hall was unclaimed for a number of years until just recently as we were starting the renovations through this space. And it was assigned to BGS security. Now, they were crammed into the 5th floor of 133 and also squatting somewhat over at 6 Baldwin. So now most of their is inside of that 133 space.
Is this one of the things we were talking about, getting IT above the flood line? Is this above the flood line?
Yes, it is. It is above.
And it wasn't before, right?
And in the State House basement, it was still above the flood line, but it was in the basement here.
Okay.
Over 133, it is still above the base flood elevation plus 2 feet, so we comply with FEMA in that aspect. However, the power and air conditioning is not.
Okay.
minor technicality.
For this, for the 133
For 133, yes.
that really slammed.
When the flood hit, we had power back there. Once the water receded, we were able to get power to that. Otherwise, it was operating off of a battery for the time frame.
That's what I remember. Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it was a rush to get it to it, and we did get it up and running for sure.
What's the project that you were saying Joe would have the answer to yesterday?
All of them.
One specific discussion we had and it's gone out.
I know, I don't remember. What were we talking about yesterday? Corrections, bed counts, utilization, DOC. It was in DOC, wasn't it? I don't remember.
I remember Joe's name coming up yesterday.
No, I do remember something with
He
BGS.
said Joe will know.
Joe will know.
He's coming in
Back
tomorrow.
Yes,
and
that's all.
the person that was wrote it down. Including-
Yep.
What year was that built?
Which one?
133.
33.
Just like,
Cornerstone of 1921.
It's National Life.
National Life built that.
because it's gorgeous inside. I was just in there
Yes, it
last
is.
night and the ceiling of the entryway, it's stunning.
It
You
is.
know, I never really.
It was
been
an
there
insurance
before.
company that built it. National Life.
Yes, they built
That's
good
where-
bones in that in 2002 to 2006. We overhauled that building completely, all new electrical, HVAC. But, you know, the structure itself is in great shape.
It was the courthouse.
Oh, the Essex
Oh, the
County
Essex, yeah.
Courthouse. That's what it was, it's HVAC. Do you know anything about that?
Only that there's a project there, but it is not owned by BGS. Judiciary has told me. Yeah, yes.
Judiciary is the one in spearheading that one,
That's correct.
and not BGS. Okay. So there's no capital funds in it. There's no capital dollars in it. Okay.
Do I dare ask what that was?
What was
The dignitaries.
for 133?
I thought you just said the dignitaries have responsibility. Maybe I didn't-
Judiciary.
Oh, judiciary.
Yeah, judiciary.
Thank you very much.
I'm told at home that I mumble. And I tell him he's hard of hearing. Yeah, right. Troy,
Just a little clarification on the use of the word substantially complete there. Is that complete? I mean, we're gonna have, you got 37,000 left.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we are substantially complete. The fact that we have taken occupancy of the space, we're using it. We're still in that 1-year warranty and then tweaking a few items.
but the 200,000 was in addition to 1.8 you already had.
That is
So
correct.
they already had 1.8 million.
Yes.
Previous capital budgets. And last year, there was an additional 200,000 that was requested to do the work. For that. So it's about a $2 million project. And you've moved the server from the State House over there?
Yes. Those-
So that was part of the key. So 133 State Street was originally built by National Life, and that's where Governor Davis worked, Dean Davis.
Mhm.
And then National Life built the building up on the hill, and the state took this building over. History.
And that was in the 60s, up top.
Yes.
So that's that look of that, the architectural.
Yes.
The 60s. It's a beautiful building still. Anyway.
How do you like the looks of that building?
What?
I just love it up there. It's a beautiful building. It really, National Life up top. Drive up there at night, the
Yeah.
lights on and the grounds, they do a beautiful job up there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's where a lot of state functions that we lease space
Mhm.
up there now. We have the Agency of Transportation, the bulk of it is there. After we lost the Waterbury Complex, Agency of Natural Resources is up there. Department of Forests, Parks, Fish and Wildlife, all of that's there in lease space.
Then V-Trans moved to Barry. Agency of Education is backfilled up there along with ADS and a few others.
We lease,
It's one of your favorite building types, the parking garage.
we don't own it.
What do we,
That's the key.
don't want
Don't want-
another parking garage. Another story.
Other stories.
Next is the Newport Courthouse, the replacement planning and design for that facility. Presently, judiciary is the only one residing in the courthouse now. Probation and parole and the state's attorney have moved out. Part of that was they were needing more space. But also there was a little bit of a conflict when you're entering the front door. Everybody comes through this process there for individuals who, you know, were attending court and or having to go to probation and parole. So that was one of the reasons. Plus, it was built, I don't remember the age of the building. It was a federal building. It was a post office. Way back when, and it converted. So you have a very narrow set of stairs going up all 4 flights, and in that center of the stairs is an elevator. That elevator is not code compliant. We actually have a chair for somebody to transfer to fit to the narrow opening in that door. And basically you back in and you cannot turn around. I don't think you can get 2 people wide in that elevator.
Really?
A person and a half, yes. When we purchased the building back in the 80s, we did, in the far right-hand corner that you're not seeing here, put a second means of egress, the whole stair tower in. So it's, you know, at its end of life for us for usefulness and moving on. It is a historic building. So we're presently looking, we've gone out for a land search. The problem is there's no good viable land at a reasonable cost in the downtown area. So there was a talk of looking outside of the downtown Newport area, and that's been going around for a bit now. There's also 2017, I think, 2018, we did a study to try, because off to the, not here, but if you're looking at the photo, sort of be off to your right-hand side and set back is the county court. The judiciary has joined the 2 courts, and so we actually looked at connecting the 2 buildings together to create and bring the 2 buildings of a pathway to make them on the same level, accessible entrance, sally port, bringing in detainees. However, the cost of that way back then was $14 million, and it wasn't ideal. So that's when later on we had looked at whether or not we should just build them. We renovate the existing building, judiciary like this, you really can't do any renovations while court is going on, because they're doing recordings also. So you don't run a hammer drill or something like that, just telegraph through the whole building. It makes it difficult.
Well, I'm sure you know the answer to this, obviously. Since you said they're looking outside of the city, the whole must be too expensive. No, not willing to be sold.
It was probably double the appraised value, I believe.
Okay.
Is it still in receivership?
Yes.
The pit. We're hoping to put it in the pit.
Yeah.
Which is right next to it, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, it's on the
On the left side, left-hand side, same side of the street, yes.
So PMP and state's attorneys have moved out. Where did they move to?
They're in lease space.
So does that change the scope of this project at all?
I think it's worth looking at to see whether or not you still have the elevator. That's, you know, not code compliant. We did just spend money to rehab it because it kept dying every other day, and you couldn't get parts for it because
Oh,
it is the original elevator, not when it was built back in the day of the 20s or whenever it was constructed. But it is the original elevator to that building, and it's just the parts are no longer had. So that's something that you'd have to consider, and you would be able to take out that stair tower because of historic value to the building. So a lot of that comes into play of could we make it work?
so the 750,000 is in addition to what we've already put in place because we're hoping to purchase land. We have about 3 million. Is it around 3 million?
I don't remember on that.
I think it's around 3 million, but I'm not sure.
Oh, yes, but we were looking for not only some planning funds, but also to
Just-
start purchasing land and then continue. And this would help in that endeavor if we back out for a land search and find a property.
goes around 3 million to start design documents and all of that to start work, but this has been going on since 2019,
Mhm.
2020. Been going on a while. And we were really hoping for the pit, a hole in the middle of Newport. But
Is that a closed door? That's not happening?
still in receivership. And the price is either too high or the person doesn't want to sell it. Sean?
When we were up on the, when Representative Marcotte brought us up on the Northeast Kingdom bus tour, the town's really trying hard to do something with the pit. But my question is, so what you're saying is doing a renovation to this existing building is more expensive than building new
Oh, yes.
by a lot.
I don't know if by a lot, because I don't know what the renovations would be to make this work,
Right.
because now we have additional space in there. But when we're looking to do the elevator work, because there's going to be no elevator.
Right.
And the courtrooms are on the second and third floor, was to find a temporary home for judiciary for one courtroom. And between the lease and the fit up was over $1 million for just the one courtroom. So we'd be looking at something like that also, similar to what we've done down at the Hartford,
What we're doing
Building.
now.
temporary relocating them.
Right.
So I mean, it's not to say that it can't be done and dollars could work. It's just, what are we doing with it now? And that would, further planning now to take that into account.
So that's what we as a committee, once we get the governor's budget, we'll be doing it. There may be some new direction to this being proposed by the governor, or there may not be. But even if there isn't a governor's recommend for dollars for this, we're gonna have to resolve this one way or the other. And those decisions will be weighed in this committee. Is it more feasible to relocate and build new? What's the cost? What's the pros? What's the cons to that? Or do we rehab this? Do we, I hate to say it, but tear down a portion of it and build new? Do you renovate a current building? Those are decisions that we'll talk about in this committee. Those are tough decisions to make,
And it's really expensive to renovate, especially in Holbrook.
but it's a historic factor.
Yeah.
As well. And you get to a point, do we tear it down and build new? We have the land.
That's my question. So if it's got the historic marker or whatever, can we tear it down?
That would be the conversation to have with historic preservation and Forest and Park, the Federal Forest Park for that, for a good reason to do that. The property itself, you're basically looking at the angle of it. On this photo here is we're fronted on two sides of the street, city street. The right-hand side's a drive going to the county court, and on the back side is probably 40 feet from the building to the property line. Back there, we have probably 3 feet of green space between the building and the curb. Drive, diagonal parking, and then you're 3 to 4 feet higher to the next property over. So it's a tight spot to even consider an addition. That's when we looked at it. We were coming out here on the right-hand side of the building and extending that across the drive and into the parking lot to the county court, and then connecting to the county court. Make that work.
Then you also have to work with the community too.
Yeah.
So this one's gonna be one that we're gonna have to start making some decisions here because the money's missing. Can't seem to move forward one way or the other. And you've gone out for RFPs for property at all?
Yes, we have.
And what have you gotten back?
I think you're right. We did get, for the pit. But again, it was double the appraised value. Some out on Route 5, so it wasn't just in the downtown. So that's working with the cities to be in the downtown. And also, trying to find land that is available to build on.
How far outside of the city is the Route 5 place?
I don't recall.
But it's not
That's
miles versus tens of miles?
yes, it's not that far,
Okay.
but that'd be an Eric Pembroke question.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Didn't have to be exact, but.
Anything else?
I just have to say this, and you know, just coming from the building world, that building, we can't build that anymore.
No kidding.
And it breaks my heart to think about knocking it down. So it would just, you know, and
Right now with us,
Is-
it's not an option because,
Okay.
you know, the hoops you would have to jump through, we haven't even considered that.
And you've had someone tell you how much it's gonna cost to renovate the inside of it?
We have not. We've gone to the, you know, we're trying to find land first as to whether or not we'd be in or out. But when we did that study a while ago, that was in that $14 million price tag. So I did renovate that space also.
Nice one to me.
It's just like, we can't, there's not craftsmen to do that anymore.
Beautiful building.
Craftspeople, sorry.
Did you split up the two courts, put the county court somewhere else?
That's a judiciary question. I'm not sure how that, because now they're somewhat integrated and I don't know how that functions. I think right now they're looking to use a little bit of the space, but they're still running back and forth between the two buildings.
You have civil in one, you have criminal in the other.
I think so. I'm not exactly sure how they split them.
So what will happen is we will have a section in our capital budget that will deal with the judiciary. We will have the court administrator here as well as, that's Terry Corzine, as well as the chief superior court. That's to talk about their needs for the judiciary and the courthouses. They make a request, the judiciary makes a request to the fifth floor, to the governor, for funding, for capital bill funding. And we'll see what the governor puts in. And BGS does the work usually for the judiciary, but the judiciary is the one that makes the recommends what they want. They make the request to the governor. It's not BGS, unless some courthouses get pushed into BGS, like you've seen that with the Brattleboro and the Barry, because those are much more involved. And then I'm sure this one would also kick in. This will kick into BGS because it's much more involved. But in terms of the use of the building and what's needed, judiciary is the one in the driver's seat for that. Well,
I was gonna say, I'm looking at this and it looks like it's under the
it's
Agency of
under BGS.
Administration.
Yeah, it's under
Okay.
BGS.
Okay. Oh, yeah, BG, there we go, right there.
And Albans, the Northwest State Correctional Facility Roof Replacement Project.
It's the roof. It's the roof. That's
Roofs have a 20-year to a 30-year lifespan. Sometimes they're even shorter than that with the membranes. And so what we're looking to do, there's multiple roofs. If you look at the drawing, the shaded buildings, the darker gray ones, are the roofs that we're looking to tackle under this. We went out to bid last spring. And this was one of those times when with the bidding climate it came in high. But we also had another bidder who was less than half. So part of it was trying to figure out why there was a $500,000, $1.9 million difference.
Yep.
And then because the 1.9 was above the amount of funding that we had, we were then evaluating to reduce the scope. You know, which was, could we take offline for another year or so and still get the project in place? And that's where we're at right now.
So what was the $251 expenditure?
went out for the RFP.
Were you having
That was-
lunch?
It was a good lunch. No, that was for a company called Blueprints, Cedric. That's where our plans and specifications. So a lot of printing for that was at that one expense there.
I couldn't help myself.
He originally was done under planning to get us off the ground, to get us the drawings.
Right now, you're reevaluating how to go forward with which roofs.
Yes, we're, because we also with the roofing, it's not just simply replacing the roofing material anymore with the wet membrane and the likes of that. Once you strip off the roof, the energy code is requiring us to bring it up to code standards. So it's adding insulation. In some instances, it's not that difficult. In others, it is. It can become a structural issue when you're adding more snow load to the building. Also, when you think of your own home, and if you added 4 inches to your roof or more, you'd be looking at your vent stack. Anything else that's on there has to be lifted. So in this case, we also have mechanical equipment on the roof. So all those curbs that are holding up the equipment above the roof line also have to be raised. And so that's where it's not just a roofing project, re-roofing project, you're adding so much more to it. Being also a correctional facility, the lower roofs have razor ribbon on them, on the fascia. So that has to be taken off. And a lot of roofers don't even want to touch it for that reason. Because it's like a slinky. In the worst cases of a slinky, when it does start to fail and it gets entangled, razor ribbon can do that also. So you gotta be very, very careful in taking it off and then putting it back on.
It's a really sharp slinky.
Yes, it is. It's the adult slinky, not the child slinky.
And just to clarify, both bids are still active?
Yes.
Okay. And you're just trying to figure out.
Basically, it's to regroup.
Yeah.
Because of that split, there's a big difference. So that's an issue.
Sean?
Who's the subcontractor who puts the slinky razor wire up to begin with?
There are fencing companies out there who do that.
And are they
The subcontractor,
and they take it down and then put it back up?
yes. Yeah. If
Expensive to take down razor wire.
the easiest, putting it up the first time is easy, taking it down and reusing it is really difficult.
So
What you really want to do is you run a pipe through it, 20-foot pipe. Disconnect at the ends and just have the slinky in the center and, yeah.
That's a
If it, no, you have to be very careful because once it entangles, it's horrible mess.
And did I understand you right? You've got at least two proposals out there and they're so far apart
That's
that you're suspecting someone doesn't understand?
correct.
Okay.
That is
But
correct.
I thought you also said, but you're reducing the requirements already?
Well, we're looking at that because if you're at the 1.9, we don't have the funding for that. So it's to reducing that cost
Gotcha.
to that. Because the other bidder is certainly well below our estimate also. So that's one of those issues that,
And is it your group that interrogates the low bidder to see if they just really want the job and are
Right.
capable? Or
in all of our
outside doing
bids that we receive, we reach out to the lowest responsible bidder and so, this is what you submitted here, go over any unique things that are in the bid package and say, are you comfortable with your price? Because, we may have some issues in this. Did you make sure in this case, are you taking off the razor ribbon to replace the fascia, stuff like that? So
But you do that internally. You're
We-
not bringing an outside consultant to do that.
if we had an architect or an engineer on the project, they would be sitting at the table while we're asking those questions also.
That's a dumb question.
Yep.
So when you say lowest responsible bidder, what does that look, what is the responsible in that? There's a definition, I'm sure, other than just.
I wish it was a great definition for that, but it's really about, somebody who's not throwing a price at it
Okay.
without really going in depth. So when you do have a low bidder, and we have had some, we've sat down with them and it's like, they've got it covered. And you're going, okay, don't know how, but they show us their books and say, we're reviewing that with the drawings and going, it appears you have it covered. Sometimes, you don't have that. They don't want to be upfront as to where the money is going and the likes of that.
Gotcha.
It's not that often that we don't go with the lowest responsible bidder, the low bidder.
I was just curious if there was a technical definition for
Do
it.
not.
But I understand the principle. Thank you.
And we always have contingency built into our dollars.
Yeah.
For the project, we hope.
In this climate, that typically gets spent right away.
So we're also having other work done at the St. Albans facility, which deals with the booking area. Does this roofing impact that or vice versa?
It does do the administration area and the booking area roof. It does do that. And if you've ever been there or haven't been, there's what's known as sort of the Great Wall. It's like a 20-foot high wall that separates the administration, the non-secure side, as opposed to the secure side of the facility. So it's really on the inside, it's a sally port, lockable doors that interlock. And this is, instead of running a fence on the outside like we have down in Springfield up and over the roof, they just built a large wall. And some of the bricks are failing on that. And so we have to re-anchor them to the concrete wall. Right now, the thought being is that roof line and wall would not change in the booking admin expansion.
So the two projects are kind of intertwined, but kind of not. So that must play into your decision here a little bit with which of the roofs you do first.
We would do the worst roofs first. If I had a project that was ready to go out to bid in 6 months, I would still limp along patching the roof, but they're leaking. And so that's why we are replacing them, and that's what I would look at doing.
Regardless, we know what we're doing with the booking area or not.
Yes, because again, a lot of that stuff above is also mechanical space, and we're going to be feeding the space down below.
To be continued is my hunch.
Northeast State Correctional Facility and the Caledonia Community Work Camp, same site, two different facilities. A door control replacement. This started back a few years ago at the Northern State Correctional Facility. That was the first facility up to have the door lock system replaced. As you can see here in the photos, it was just as simple as a push button and interconnecting relays to run the doors and everything else. Now it's all touchscreen, computerized. You can do a lot more with shutting off the water, different lighting, everything else. You can do that through the old buttons, but the buttons here are no longer being manufactured. So coming to the computer age, everything is now higher end technology so that, the officer can push on a button, touch screen on a camera zooms in, brings it in. You can, when somebody's at the door, they push a button to be allowed into the door. On the screen, that pops up also the camera. So you know what door it is and what camera should zoom in, so you can see the individual who's there. And you can also talk to them.
Do you need Wi-Fi for that?
No, it is all hardwired.
Hardwire.
It's in its own separate network.
Awesome.
But it has its own servers and network, completely isolated. So after Newport, we just completed work down at the Southeast State Correctional Facility. Southern State Correctional Facility in Springfield. During those times, we've also spent major maintenance money on both of these buildings, and we'll be doing the same thing in St. Johnsbury, because at that point in time, we're moving the incarcerated individuals out of a living unit, and that gives us an opportunity to do some renovations in there that have just been on the deferred list. Painting, replacement of lights, some of the plumbing fixtures, some of the flush valves and the lights of that. It makes it so much easier when that unit is down. We're also replacing some of the doors. Over the years, the doors get a little out of alignment and they have to be replaced. So we do that also.
Kevin?
Maybe a foolish question, maybe I've watched too many Batman movies, but is there redundancy in a system like this? So that if someone wanted to hack in and cause havoc, or you had a power failure and your generators didn't activate, that you could override it? I mean, in a lot of military equipment, you have a sort of a dual system, you got a backup. Is there anything like that? Because
there's not a backup server to it, but there is a backup battery to be operating that in case of the loss of
so
the generator.
electrically we're safe, but
Yes.
if somebody hacked into it, Nothing per se that's,
There's probably a possibility of that happening. There is only, although it's only one link in and so, protected and only going to Department of Corrections, and the company who manages this for us, and servicing it. And you need the software. It's possible.
low probability, but if someone wanted to. us having-
Anything's possible. Yes.
Yeah,
Just gave him an idea, Ken.
yeah, if you're on a submarine, you want a backup. I'm not suggesting you need it here.
You don't want to stay under very long.
Exactly.
Agreed.
The redundancy is sometimes necessary just to protect lives, and I just didn't know that was the situation.
And then also the officers have keys. Some of them have to be gotten from master control, but if the system does die 100%, then they go to keys because every single lock that is up there is also keyable.
Thanks.
So the schematic design will be done at the end of this month. When do you get into construction documents?
Shortly thereafter, once we're completed with the schematic design development and then our construction documents, we're hoping to be out there this fall if possible. And what we've done is not only with St. Johnsbury, but also Marble Valley Regional Correctional Facility. That building facility was actually built first. And all they did back in the very early 80s, 70s was erase the name Rutland, I think, on it for the town and put St. Johnsbury down. It was pretty much the same thing. There are a few differences that, they corrected over time. One of the major differences that'll come up later is that St. Johnsbury doesn't have air conditioning where Marble Valley is completely air conditioned. So.
Marble Valley is air conditioned,
Yes.
as is Chittenden.
Yes.
Rob?
Yes. And so that, what the plans that we're doing for St. Johnsbury are almost identical. There'll be some modification down at Rutland. That one, I believe, is the next one up. And so the designs are being done somewhat concurrently because of that. Construction will be different. River Junction Courthouse, Hartford. This one here is under construction. Demolition of the inside is well underway. Most of the sheetrock is gone. Holes are cut in the floor for relocation of plumbing and the likes of that. We will be putting an addition on the front. And this here is the front that you're looking at. It'll be a small two-story addition. It was mainly on the first floor because of the need for a judiciary to be processing people coming in. The old facility was it was in a lobby. And, when you're doing your bag scanner, body scanners, you're walking through, it was just taking up too much room and it was very cluttered. Now you have the process of being able to go in one door, be processed. Anybody wants to exit can freely exit. And when we did that, it was put a whole foundation in for one floor, you might as well go up one more flight. So we did one more flight and that provides some additional space for judiciary. And on the southern side, would be on the right-hand side of the building, we're doing the other entry, another lock entry that's coming in with a small two-story that provides a little bit more space for PGS and judiciary. The other part of this was going to be a major work on the building is about 10 years after the building was constructed in the late 80s, we had water infiltrating around the windows, mainly on the first floor. We'd gone through probably around 2010-ish in that neighborhood, 2008, taking off some brick to find out why. And it was flexible flashing that was installed instead of rigid flashing above the windows. And it had fallen down. And so brick's porous, water gets into it, and there's a gap between your brick and the interior, the sheathing on the other side of that gap. It was getting down, hitting the flashing, then running into the windows. So we originally had planned to strip the building completely of all the brick and the precast concrete to get in and fix all the flashing, and then at the same time, adding insulation to comply with today's energy standards. why I wasn't able to continue last Friday here, because I was down there because of the issue is the cost to do that, to put all that back was going to be exorbitant, because the existing metal studs that make up the outside wall and the brick is fastened to to keep it from falling over, not structurally up, was not going to work. So we were evaluating what we could do instead. What we came up with for a fix, or at least we're going to try, and they're working on it now, is on the inside is to strip off the sheetrock, cut some of the metal studs. So we can actually, the windows are being replaced, so we'll have access to the window headers and get some flashing in up above and get that fastened behind the sheathing and through the sheathing so that it then drips out over the window. So we're going to be evaluating that, and we believe that that is going to make it easier and less expensive for the whole project. It's still not the best way of doing it because you are working between, metal studs and sheathing.
Right.
That's what we're aiming for.
May get some pushback. here.
Nice job. No, that's awesome. Is there a gutter system on this?
There is, but you don't see it as a hidden gutter on the roof. So that you have the pitch of the roof coming down and there's a small parapet that catches that. And then in certain areas, like behind the peak that you see that's running left and right, there's flat roofs up there also in certain areas. So it's not all pitched.
So with this additional piece here that wasn't anticipated, is there going to be a cost overrun?
They're working on that right now. I can tell you that just a demo of the exterior, the brickwork and the likes of that network was over $1 million. So we're hoping on the inside it's sheetrock. Sheetrock's easier to remove, get rid of, and put back.
The demo for the windows?
For all the exterior brick and
Okay.
precast masonry.
Windows were included anyway, right?
Yes, exactly. So they're all being updated, so. But again, can it work? Will it work? That's what we're aiming for.
So I see here on project status that you have a change order for the guaranteed maximum price is in process. Is not have too much of a cost overrun?
The way that functions is this is a construction management project. Typically, your first change order is for your guaranteed maximum price. So we write the contract for the full estimated amount that we put forth in our request for proposal. There's a pre-construction phase. That pre-construction phase is what we pay the construction manager to help us through the design process and then bid out the work. This construction manager is working with us. We're not at odds. We're in it together. It's an open book process. We get to see all the bids, what the pricing is, how it all lays out. It's more work on my project managers to do that because you're more involved than if it was just a set of plans and specs where you're just looking at it and the spec says, that's what I own. You owe this to me, whether it works or not. Or whether they got a better price on something and it doesn't match your specifications. You say, nope, that's what it is. During the pre-construction phase, working with the design team and the project manager, our contractor has the ability to go, that product you're looking for, that item or that process is going to cost you more money to do that. We believe this is a better option. So then as a team, you evaluate it and go, it is or it isn't. And then if there's a savings, all savings come back to the state in this aspect because of the open book. So if we're unsure of an item that we haven't investigated enough or don't know enough about until you open up the wall, we carry an allowance. That allowance isn't spent, all of that comes back to the state. So in this scenario here with removing the brickwork and whatnot, if there's a win for the state, all that money's coming back to the state.
Have you ever sweetened the pot and said if you find a cost savings, you get part of that, and then it all coming back to the state, so it incentivizes them to find cost savings?
No, because early on, 25 years ago, it was like that, but it wasn't sort of this open book and the cost savings you didn't necessarily see. It was easier to try and get the cost savings in design before you get a bid.
So you get to a change order and you can't do what your design said, and then you're
But then you're almost like the other process, but your construction manager is also working for you and going, you know, you subcontractor, the new price you gave us for this change that appears too high. And I've even, when I was a project manager, have even had the construction manager go out to bid on that item. Go find somebody else, because the subcontractor didn't want to budget the price. Go find somebody else, and that has proven to be less expensive.
Cool.
During bid time is when everybody is theoretically looking for work most of the time. And so if they want work, their overhead or profit may come down a little bit because of that. During a change order, you don't get that. They're already locked into the job, and you know, it's typically 15% for overhead and profit job.
So you've had 6 million, I believe, to date. I don't think there was anything really before that at this point. The total project. We'll see where we are next week. Emily? If you can just identify yourself.
I'm like City Deputy Commissioner for the record. Just a correction on this slide that we caught yesterday in the Senate, that it should say 26.
Okay.
Instead of,
Instead of 25.
Last,
oh, gotcha, yeah.
And with a change in brickwork, that may change also.
And part of the cost, we're leasing space across the street, correct?
Yes,
So that's coming out of this 6 million.
that is correct. Also, the fit up for the Woodstock County Court, where they're holding court, that fit up cost also came out of this project.
See what's in the governor's recommend.
Statewide stormwater.
Oh, God.
Did I just get this one?
Could you? 3 acre.
The 3 acre rule, yes, compliments of the Vermont Clean Water Act. We have 8 sites that drain into the Lake Champlain Memphremagog watershed. And the act is any sites with with 3 acres or more of impervious surfaces must treat the stormwater runoff. So we have 8 sites. This site that we're looking at here is the Northwest State Correctional Facility in St. Albans. This one is similar to Newport. When you, in this one photo here, you can see the loop around the facility. 3/4 of that loop is the gravel drive. Over the years, that 12-foot wide drive has become 20+ feet wide. They only have one vehicle going in one direction. Part of our stormwater process for this site and also at the Northern State Correctional Facility site is very similar. It's actually paving the road to save us on what we have to construct for stormwater.
So which one are you talking, the blue line or the inside square?
This square here.
Okay.
Oh,
That's over a mile long. And so with that, if we pave it 12-foot wide drive, if you will, that'll considerably save the amount of stormwater we have to do on that site. We're cutting
If
that.
we pave it.
Yes, otherwise we'll have to do extensive stormwater. And
Yeah, that facility has on-site sewer plant.
yes, it does. It's on the, sort of the bottom right corner, if you will, down the solar
So
panel.
when you say bottom right, which one for you versus?
This here is a sewer treatment plant over here. These here are solar panels.
Because we have our own sewer system, you're saying we shouldn't abide by
Just-
3 acres.
So that's an issue.
It's-
And then
That's one of the
it's
rules.
some kind of bizarre that the rules make it, so if you use a more impervious surface but less of it, that it's, you somehow don't need to,
We're reducing the impervious surface from 20+ feet down to 12.
yeah.
So you cut that half out but it's a gravel drive is impervious just as in pavement. That and in the long run, right now, there are people who come up to maintain plowing and the salting, they got, it's two runs, because there's pavement and there's gravel. So you gotta sand the gravel and you're salting the pavement, so that should have some savings in the plowing. The way the economy works, we're probably not gonna see much of that, but in the long run, we also have had during mud season, the perimeter wheels getting stuck. So it's a very wet site. So it actually should help out to pave around the facility.
How big is this total site in the blue? How big, cause that's not.
100 acres?
Somewhere around 100.
Would it be around
Okay.
100 acres?
It's that high, but it's up there, and a lot of it is wetlands.
I just knew that wasn't 3 acres, that was.
No, no, it's greater than that.
Is there any kind of stormwater planning that's been done by this? Done on this project, on this site?
Yes, right now, we're collecting a lot of the stuff that's on the inside of the fence. We'll be draining down through this gap right here in the solar panels, and over in this area here is where we're gonna have our stormwater catch basin.
I'd be really curious, because the site is about 2 miles east of the Palm Shore, Lake Champlain, but immediately west of the site, it goes uphill. So it's, yeah.
And it's also sheathing down towards the solar panels. That is correct.
Where's the entrance driveway? On that map, where's the entrance, the driveway? For the road?
Right here, you're coming off the main road here,
Yeah.
run this way, come down
Yeah.
here and go in. This road here is all paved to approximately right about here. And paved to here.
And what kind of chemicals are we protecting Lake Champlain from?
Phosphorus.
Phosphorus only? The fertilizer,
Nitrogen for Connecticut, phosphorus for Lake Memphremagog and Lake Champlain.
and that would come from fertilizers, or where would the
Comes from
phosphorus come
a
from?
variety. A lot of it is farming, some of it may be wastewater systems. Because we do have some wastewater systems that take out the phosphorus.
But within this facility, what would generate phosphorus?
It's not, other than the land out front along the road. We do lease that out to the local farmer, but otherwise it's not, but that's all part of the 3-acre rule. Doesn't matter if you're generated or not, you will comply.
It's stormwater,
Yes,
stormwater.
right. So you're collecting the stormwater and treating it on site as opposed to the runoff. So you do have runoff on any of your pervious surface can run off down into your ditches and work its way into the lake. So you're treating that water before it gets to the lake.
Not that it matters, but.
Very good on that.
Just want to comment.
Okay. I'm picking over
I
to.
understand that.
So the 3-acre rule came out of the Clean Water Act. It was passed here probably in 2017? Around 17 to comply with the EPA requirements. For the TMDL for Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog.
And the EPA is fed or state?
Federal. Our Clean Water Act complies with the federal. And if we don't bring down our phosphorus levels in our lakes, then the EPA can come in and say, you gotta upgrade your wastewater systems, municipal wastewater systems, but that's not where the bulk of the phosphorus is coming. We're working hard to comply.
So these are the 8 sites that we're doing is along with St. Albans, the Northwest State Correctional Facility. We have down at our central services in Middlesex. We have the Sarah. We have the juvenile temporary facility and the old Berlin public safety barracks. That site there for impervious surface, and we are just over, by just about 1/10 of an acre over. And we're actually looking to try and see if we can shave off 1/10, but when a building was gonna go away, that was gonna be easier, but I believe we'll still have some. The Capitol complex is by far the most difficult one to do, because we don't have a lot of green space here. I jokingly suggested a fountain on the State House lawn, but Go over well.
Are you allowed to mitigate that offsite in scenarios like this?
That we haven't investigated yet. I believe there is an avenue for that or even a one-time buyout for that, but we are trying to see if we can make it work. Part of the other problem here in Montpelier is when you look at the parking lots on the State House side of State Street, to go across State Street is very difficult with the amount of utilities that are in State Street. It is very tight to try and get anything across. Down at Department of Labor, over on Green Mountain Drive, we have a parking lot out there that the state has put in over the years, and part of it complies, but not the whole site. So we're looking at that. We do have under the parking lot right behind the building itself, the Department of Labor, 2 rows and a drive. We do have stormwater on that section, and that stormwater are channels underneath the pavement. And that's what we'd probably be looking at over here. One of the questions though that's come up is what are you going to do for mitigation of the flood? And so when we get too far ahead of that, and that's one of those, only want to do it once. So if we're going to be lowering some of our parking lots to allow more retainage for the flood, that could impact that. So 2 things going on in Montpelier.
You said a possible fountain for the front lawn. Would a bathroom that Connor has proposed, would that work for us?
Hey, Joe, could you remind me, like, it's kind of a weird arrangement over at DOL, is it we own the land and the feds own the building or something?
Yes, and we,
Is that what it- Yeah, okay.
and I forget the percentage for here in Montpelier, that the state actually owns a percentage of that building. And it's similar to the one in Burlington. I think here in Montpelier, we own more of the percentages than we do in Burlington. But yes, the land is on state.
Does BGS maintain that building?
No,
Okay.
Department of Labor has their own maintenance staff. We've helped out once in a while over the years, same with Burlington, but they have their own staff doing that.
But we're doing work inside that building.
Currently we are. We helped out, there was a line item for redoing the boilers and the chiller. That was built in the early 60s and both finally died out.
There's no federal money for their own building to do the work. Their building.
So our other sites are down in Pittsford at the Criminal Justice and Fire Service Training Academy. Then down in Virgins, the Northland Job Corps, most of that. Again, that's all areas that we can get to relatively easy. Waterbury and don't have any type of stormwater on it. Waterbury State Office Complex, after Irene went through and we rebuilt, we did do some of stormwater. And we have a permit down there. This is going to be to finish that stormwater. Next. Statewide R22 refrigerant. And phasing out of that. R22 is other refrigerants are not so good for the atmosphere, the ozone. And so we are required to take them out of service when they die. What we are doing though is recapturing when we take a unit out of service, whether it's R22 or some of the new items that have come into play now, our refrigerants that are on the list from last year. Forget what those 4A10 and a few others. We're capturing that and reusing that in units that we can. But when a unit fails, it's not just a leak that you can easily patch. The pressure differences to these are so much greater, so you can't just substitute your new refrigerant. And so what we're doing with these funds here, we're going out and having to replace air handling units, heat pumps and the likes of that to do away with the old refrigerants in them and get in new units. And so we're working our way through. Some have what we had on a list originally, like the Williston Public Safety Facility in Williston. The old facility has units with R22 in it, but we built a new facility and we're looking to eventually sell the old facility. So we're making that work. And that we won't have to replace that unit. There's units on top of, I believe Hartford was one of them, Barry Courthouse was another. So they're all over. So some were winning out on a renovation for sale and some were having to go in and replace.
Was that anticipated when you were here last year, that the equipment itself would have to be replaced?
What are you replacing with, John?
I forget the new refrigerants that are out there right
Oh,
now. I
okay.
know it is the newest
Oh, it's like
refrigerant.
another refrigerant, just
Oh, yes.
not as,
Yes.
not as deadly to the ozone.
Right. I think the new
Gotcha.
refrigerant's more flammable and the likes of that. I mean, propane is one that could be a refrigerant that is used for natural gas.
You never know what you're gonna get involved in the capital bill. And this one is an example of that.
Wait.
You're back on the refrigerant.
Walleyes.
Well,
Sorry, that was just a Troy. I didn't mean to get your first.
Art and State Buildings,
This is a tribute to our walleye projects.
It's a gift.
right, it was
It's not
increased
bad.
last biennium from 50,000 to 75,000 each year. And what we're doing here is we're planning for our money right now is a booking expansion at Northwest State, where PGS works with the Art Council. They have a committee that gets together and decide where we're looking to put the art, and then that committee also then looks at all the potential artwork and they do a selection. If you go to the mental health facility in Essex, we have artwork there that was put on some of that on the interior, and they painted what was known as the old gym. They painted the exterior wall and put art on that. So if you go around to some of our buildings, some of these are easily seen, some not so much. This one here is a sculpture at the fish hatchery and so I forget. Roxbury, thank you.
that's the last one we built.
Irene took that out and we rebuilt it. Yes, we helped A&R with that one. So here, the funds that we're looking at is also, like I said, the Northwest State Correctional Facility and in Virgins and the new juvenile facility that we were looking to construct.
So we'll have the Vermont Arts Council in to really talk about this. It's a project that some of the arts projects that we do get involved in become part of the building itself when the building is being renovated or built, and some of it's freestanding. Leave it at that for now, but we did a lot of work in this over the last 2 years, expanded some of the state buildings that could be applied to. And it was at 50,000. We've increased that to 75,000. It's really getting hard to find artists to do the work within a $50,000 budget. It's really difficult, so we did up that. It's a good program. And it's been in existence for, I would say, 30 years at least.
So refresh my memory, if we're selling a building or something happens to a building that it's not ours anymore, does the art come back to us? Or does it stay with the building?
Let's use 108 Cherry Street, for example, since that is up for sale. The artwork there, we are taking out of it and repurposing it. I think if it's possible to do that, and a lot of the art can be, I think, relocated. Some of it, like there's a tile floor in 6 Baldwin, not so much. But a lot of it, I think, could, not that we're selling buildings left and right and every day, but that is, we are repurposing. David Sheets, the curator, works on.
Oh, yes,
He'd be more than happy to tell you.
in great depth.
Anything else?
Nope.
Northern State Correctional Facility boiler replacement. These are original, they were constructed in the 90s back there, and we're looking at replacing the wood boilers. They were originally designed for coal. We modified them for wood, and it was chunk, not wood chips or pellets, but chunk wood where the incarcerated individuals actually feed the boiler during the winter months. Back in the days when the facility first opened, they used to bring in log length, and the incarcerated individuals would actually cut it up and block it up and also feed it. The corrections would have to tell you why, but I think mainly the reason being is some of the incarcerated individuals out there wielding a chainsaw, not so good anymore. With the labor that's involved with that, also on the corrections side, with having officers out there having to watch them. So it's that added cost. So we're looking to replace them. We've gone out, we have done a study, and we should be under design here shortly. That study through a life cycle cost analysis, evaluated it, and we're doing wood chips at this facility. This facility is a tight facility where we're going to actually build the chip bunker, the likes of that. The way that site is laid out with, again, wetlands, parking lots, and the secure yard. So that's all part of it, that whole, because wood chips is a delivery process, both from bringing in and off of an 18-wheeler and then getting it into your boilers. We did evaluate looking at geothermal, but that was 400 and some odd wells, which took up basically the whole site. The report also stated, the report was done before we're looking at air conditioning, the correctional facility, but over time, it was going to lose efficiency because of you were extracting the heat out of the ground so much. It really, geothermal needs a balanced look. But life cycle cost, that it was proved, and so we'll be underway, hopefully, construction next year.
Do you have a general explanation for what makes you come up to code in other areas? Like, does a project of this size, would that make you come up to code in other areas? I'm just thinking about the other building I had too.
No, because we're not necessarily touching the exterior skin of the building or the roof for this. If we did, then that wall would have to be, or roof would have to be updated.
Okay.
Fire safety wise, the way this facility is designed, it's fully sprinkled, full fire alarm, probably wouldn't be any issues at all. Perhaps depends on if there's an addition or how that whole thing works, providing the correct rated wall between the existing facility and the new or something like that.
Okay.
It's not as in-depth as a complete gut of the building. Getting the exterior wall, removing any of the existing insulation and air tap for right there. Up next is the former Southeast State Correctional Facility in Windsor. What to do with the land down there. We've done several.
See it in my lifetime.
Do you like any of these chairs? You know?
Going on for 10 years. It's when we close this facility.
Yes. Not a bad site, hidden, has its own water source. Sewer goes to the town, but it is to evaluate it yet again on what to do. Compiling the other studies that have been done to date and how to deactivate and urbanize these buildings. A lot of them, like the building you see in the center, is known as dorm dining and known as the admin building. And now, when the last use of it was for medical, you know, it has a complete sprinkler system in there. The boilers are in there, fire alarm. So if you're going to mothball that and not heat it, then you've got an issue with, you know, your sprinkler system having to go to dry system or something like that, because it still has to be protected. Some of these outbuildings are just cold storage sheds, so those are easy, but a lot of those, you know, what do you do? We've already, for the amount of drinking water that we had on the site, we have relaxed our permit a little bit to allow us just for, you know, the water's flowing to keep the pipes from freezing and the like, so that and the well's still working.
So we've got some time on Thursday, possibly. Would you folks be able to come back and we do a walkthrough of this situation with the Windsor facility? A little bit of the history, what it looks like.
We have not been able to move forward with this project as of yet on what's in front of us.
But I'm thinking of the history of it to bring the committee members up to speed in terms of when it was closed, what it's costing to keep it going right now. What, just kind of the layout of, I mean, you can do it. Troy has done this with Google Maps and just do kind of the layout of it. what is really involved on this site.
What does it a year cost to keep it kind of winter upgrade, kind of in place?
It's around 250, I think.
That's what I thought it was. I didn't know if
Thursday
it-
tomorrow.
Yeah, Thursday, tomorrow. We're pretty possibly open, so we're trying to find something to fill in. And I think the commissioner mentioned that could do something with doing some history on this, visually help the committee have a perspective of the land there. Because also we had money in the capital bill to work with wildlife to see if some of the property could be converted over to fish and wildlife. And I just want the committee to have a base of what this facility and the land, what the layout is, how it connects with the acreage that is in wildlife management right now, just so people can, just so committee members can see the whole picture. Is what I'm thinking.
Start playing together.
Is that too short to do
I
something?
don't know if we could pull it together that quick. I
That's
don't know who's in the
absolutely, we
office.
should go back and assess whether we could pull it.
Would
together.
Friday work? Or do
Friday
you
would be
Better than
better,
Thursday.
yeah.
Thursday afternoon, we are in the Senate.
Okay,
Friday afternoon, one is now full if you agree with DOC on two of the three topics that we mentioned yesterday, which was the granular data on the incarcerated individuals, and then a more detailed explanation of who gets sent to Mississippi and the criteria they use. We also have, during this time, I've been able to schedule pretrial supervision tomorrow between 2 and 3. And Ben will be here, Judge Zone will be here, but I'm waiting to hear if DOC will be here. So our times that we have
filling
available
up.
are in the morning tomorrow, depending on how long it takes, Katie McLean and Tony Fallon to talk about MOUD. And those 10:30 noon is our open time right now.
And 11, is that?
11 will
Yeah,
be
10:30
open,
to noon, yeah.
1 o'clock tomorrow would also be open, I believe.
Joe, that's empty right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Well,
thought,
What would you do with it?
don't put them on the spot.
No, just out of curiosity. Like, is it worth selling or?
That's what we need. We're the
Yeah.
ones that really
Yeah,
need
we shouldn't
to,
get into speculation.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're the ones that really need to evaluate this. What is the fair market value? What is entailed with putting this on the market? Because there would be state cost entailed in some of this, because some of the buildings may need to be demolished. What would be the use for it? How does that coincide with what the town wants? How would that coincide with the wildlife management area there?
Does the town want anything at this point?
You don't want agency of human services. It's 100 acres. It's prime state-owned property. And the real question is, do we get rid of state-owned property when we're out there trying to buy state-owned property for items? That's what we need to balance. And we've been doing this for 8 or 10 years now. So maybe next week, you folks could put something together. And maybe like Wednesday or Thursday next week.
The history of Windsor.
Will, did you have your hand?
No, I did not.
Yes.
So it's a real complicated, it's gone through reiterations. I mean, it's just, we've been trying to figure out what to do with this.
Right. It just looks like a lot of money sitting there.
It is in many ways, in many ways.
Right now.
So we'll get into it.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Now we move in to the cash fund, section 18.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Or we're done.
It's 5 minutes of talk.
Yeah.
But this is
Well, I
a
thought
good spot to stop.
Yeah.
I'm only kidding, but.
Don't hear anyone fighting.
Joe's gonna fight for that too, right?
Still water trip this afternoon.
Would you folks be available at all, like tomorrow from 10:30 or 11 o'clock to noon to continue on this?
I am.
Seriously.
All right.
We're trying to fill in. Probably be around 10:30, quarter to 11, something like that.
Two buildings away.
You mean 2 buildings away from finishing?
No, he's-
Coming here. Inside, 2 buildings away.
Skipping a jump.
As long as we keep the pavement clear.
Yeah.
then
Yeah, I mean,
You can do that tomorrow, Russ?
I know you're kidding, but it works.
To come back tomorrow, there's some cash on it, 10:30.
Education.
So why don't we break for lunch and we are back at 1 o'clock this afternoon and we're gonna be dealing with the appropriations bill budget adjustment. So you'll have some documents that we'll send out to you.